Coming to you from the mountains and the plain. The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. My name is Max McGuire. Happy Friday, everyone. I know early in the pandemic it was hard to figure out what day of the week it was. Not as much now, but it definitely feels like a Friday to me. I don't know about you guys. Either way, happy Friday. Going into the weekend, big weekend coming up. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern, President Trump is announcing his pick to replace the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So that's going to be happening at 5 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be covering it. So make sure you check for our live stream. We'll be going live at 4:30 Eastern, a half an hour before, to kind of give a little pregame coverage. We'll then be having a watch party for the actual event. And then we'll stay live for 30, 45 minutes to an hour afterwards to talk about the pick, talk about what he or she has done, and just kind of give some post-game analysis. So make sure you tune in for that. That's going to be tomorrow. But today we're going to talk about this because we have a commenter in the YouTube comment section. Oh man, I hope this show lives up to the title. LOL, getting rid of Pelosi would be a 2020 miracle. Yeah, so this is something that we've been pushing for a while. Anyone who's part of our community knows that we routinely put pressure on Congress to remove Nancy Pelosi, and there's no shortage of reasons to remove her. Obviously, the people of San Francisco get to decide whether she's in Congress or not, but it's up to other members of Congress to decide whether or not she should be Speaker. So we've been pushing for that for a long time. And again, there's no shortage of reasons to remove her from power. But this week, we finally got word from Kevin McCarthy that there is a plan to do so. Now, the GOP establishment, Kevin McCarthy, he's the House Minority Leader, he did kind of add that caveat, but at least we now know that there is a real plan to remove Nancy Pelosi if she keeps it up. So let's go ahead and play that right from the start, and then we'll talk about it. Let's play cut one.
The president is supposed to move forward, and he will. The Senate is supposed to take the action, and they will. It's the constitutional right, and they're following through. And I'll make you this one promise. Listening to the Speaker on television this weekend, if she tries to move for an impeachment based upon the president following the Constitution, I think there'll be a move on the floor to have her no longer, or the question of her being Speaker. She may think she has a quiver, we do too. We believe everybody in Congress raises their hand and swears to uphold the Constitution. The president did too, and that's what he's following through on. And to think for one moment that they would move impeachment because he's following the Constitution, we will take the movement to remove her from speakership.
All right, so before we get into this, if you're watching on Facebook, make sure you like the video, make sure you share, make sure you comment. On YouTube, make sure you give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. We just need 4 more people to subscribe, and we'll hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we'll be able to monetize the channel. So if you haven't already, please consider it. We go live Monday through Friday for an hour every day with these podcasts. Please do consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. Help us out a lot. So what you just heard there from Mike McCarthy is this promise that if Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats go down this path to impeach Donald Trump again, saying that there is a plan in place to remove her as Speaker of the House and that they would call on Democrats, vulnerable Democrats, to join them. Now, whether or not you think that's possible, that's an entire different topic. Whether you think it's possible for Nancy Pelosi to impeach the president again, I think it's actually easier than you might think. We've talked about this earlier in the week, but the reason that Democrats are pushing this impeachment narrative, like, oh, we're going to impeach Trump again, it's not because they actually think they can remove him from office. They know you're not going to be able to remove him from office this close to an election, especially not with the Senate in GOP hands. That's not what they're going for. They're just trying to gum up the gears, right? To throw a wrench in the gears of the Senate to slow them down so that they cannot confirm a Supreme Court nominee before the election. Now, they've kind of accepted the fact that Trump's going to probably get his nominee one way or another. They want to stop it from happening before the election because obviously having an extra justice on the Supreme Court, an extra conservative justice on the Supreme Court gives President Trump much more power to fight some of these lower court rulings that we've been talking about on the podcast all week and the last 2 weeks. Without that ninth judge, you run the risk of John Roberts joining the leftists, having a 4-4 split, and leaving a ruling like what we saw in Pennsylvania, where the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said that you have to count ballots for days afterwards, even if it doesn't have a postmark. So there's a lot at stake here. And they don't really think that they can actually remove Trump from office. But the way that impeachment is actually set up, the very minute that the House transfers the articles of impeachment to the Senate has to stop everything it's doing and focus entirely on those impeachment articles. So the Senate cannot hold confirmation hearings if there are articles of impeachment brought before them. They have to handle the articles of impeachment first before they can get to anything else. That's what Democrats are talking about doing. Again, they don't think they can actually remove Trump. They think that if they send articles of impeachment over to the Senate, they can gum up the process just long enough to stop a new nominee from being confirmed before Election Day. Because the way the rules are set up, the day of, you can't do anything of it the day of, and then you're supposed to at least take a couple of days, right? You're supposed to have some hearings, supposed to have some votes. It's very easy for Democrats in the Senate to filibuster that thing and to drive it longer and longer, right? To waste time. That's the ultimate goal here. And so we finally hear from Republicans in the House that if Democrats go down this path, they believe that they have a pathway to removing Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. And the only way they could do that is if they had Democrats join them, of which there are many. There are dozens of Democrats up for re-election in November in vulnerable districts that Donald Trump won back in 2016. They're not going to want to go up for re-election in a Trump district saying that, yes, I'm from the party that impeached Donald Trump not once, but twice. And the first time was completely bogus. The second time was just to try and delay a Supreme Court nomination. No Democrat wants to actually run for re-election on that platform. They won't risk it. So I do believe that if Nancy Pelosi were to go down this path and the Republicans were to force her out, I think they would be able to get the votes. I think there would be enough Democrats to say, oh, whoa, this is too much. People like Connor Lamb in Western Pennsylvania, right? He is a very tough opponent in Western Pennsylvania. I forget the gentleman's name. Someone might be able to tell me in the comment section. But he's running a very tough race. He has a very tough road to re-election. He wouldn't want to do it. Look all around the country. There's dozens of Democrats just like this. So we talk about this, and you ask, why is Kevin McCarthy I call him Mike McCarthy. I don't know why I call him Mike McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy. Why is Kevin McCarthy doing this? It's because Nancy Pelosi went on the air over the weekend and had what many people have described as like a mini stroke. We played it earlier in the week. Let's go ahead and play it. Mr. Producer, let's play that clip.
Voting the day that we lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
But to be clear, you're not taking any arrows out of your quiver. You're not ruling anything out.
Good morning. Sunday morning. We have a responsibility. We take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. Good morning. Sunday morning. We have a responsibility. We take it.
So that was Nancy Pelosi, and that sound effect of Windows shutting down, that was added. I don't know who made that clip, the zoom in, but they added that Windows shut down sound effect to make it look like she was shutting down her processors. And then you can see zoom in on his face. He's like, good morning, Sunday morning. That's what most people talked about. Like, oh my goodness, Nancy Pelosi just had a mini stroke. But the other part that she's saying is that there's arrows in her quiver and she's not going to take any of them out. Meaning, yes, impeachment is on the table. This is not us exaggerating this. That's why she brought that up. And yeah, she did look to have a mini stroke when she said, good morning, Sunday morning. But overall, she's still talking about impeaching the duly elected president of the United States a month and a half, or at that point it would be a month before the election, but not because he's done anything wrong, but because he dared to fill a vacant Supreme Court seat. So that is why Kevin McCarthy came out with this promise that if they go down this road, yes, removing Nancy Pelosi is on the table. Now, I want to talk about some of the other things that Nancy Pelosi has done to justify her removal from office. Mr. Producer, go ahead and put up my screen for a second. We all remember this. We all remember this moment when Nancy Pelosi, during Donald Trump's State of the Union address, tore up the speech on camera right behind him. Disrespectful, lacking of decorum, all things that in a normal situation would justify her removal as Speaker. Let's be honest. If a Republican had done that, he'd already be removed. He would have resigned in shame. But Nancy Pelosi has no shame. She knows no shame. Interestingly enough, there is an argument. Now, I don't want to get fact-checked because if I say this, I'm going to get fact-checked. But I'll preface it this way. There's an argument that by doing that, she just ripped up an official government document. Now, other side says, oh, no, that was a gift. It was a personal gift. No, it was an official copy of the speech printed out by the executive branch and given to the Speaker of the House and the legislative branch. There is an argument to be made that was an official document, and that when she ripped it up and then put it in the trash can, she was violating the Federal Records Act by not preserving a federal document. Not just preserving documents for the running, but also for posterity purposes, right? For looking back, it's a historical document. And she just ripped it up. Go ahead and take that off the screen, Mr. Producer. There's an argument to be made that the minute she did that, she justified being removed from office. You say it's a weak argument, but it's definitely an argument. And again, if a Republican had done this, they would have already resigned in shame. No doubt about it whatsoever. If a Republican had did that live on camera, they would have resigned in shame. But there's also this. Go ahead, put my screen back up, Mr. Producer. A lot of people don't remember this, but last year, Nancy Pelosi, towards the end of the year, she led a delegation to Madrid for what's called the COP25. That's the United Nations Climate Change Conference. It's where all the countries meet to figure out how to enact and impose the Paris Climate Agreement on the rest of the world. Donald Trump said he wasn't going to this. He said, nope, we've withdrawn from the Paris Climate Agreement. We're not going to it because we're not in it. Why would we send a delegation to a treaty conference that we're not in, or an agreement conference we're not in? Nancy Pelosi, not only that, but Donald Trump and the State Department said no U.S. officials are to attend this. It is the foreign policy of the United States to not participate in this conference. Nancy Pelosi led a delegation of all Democrats to this conference in complete defiance of the President of the United States. Not only that, though, I mean, that's bad enough, right? It's bad enough that she did that she defied the President of the United States. When she got there, though, she told other countries of the world to ignore Donald Trump and to negotiate with her and Congress instead on issues like climate change. So it's not just that she defied the president, she actually substituted herself for foreign policy negotiations, which anyone who knows all about the Logan Act, right? Remember what they went after Mike Flynn for. With the Logan Act, you have it's illegal for anyone to claim to represent the United States outside of the chain of command. So when she went there, there's an argument to be made that she violated the Logan Act. I mean, the fact that Michael Flynn was investigated for it, absolutely you investigate Pelosi for it. It's crazy. There's so many reasons to justify it. So I'm told by Ms. Producer that we have a caller on the line who wants to talk about the powers that the Senate has. We'll go ahead and take the call. We have Ruth on the line. Ruth, can you hear me?
My name's Cherie.
Well, he reported you as Ruth. Sorry about that. Hi, Cherie.
No problem. Max, good afternoon. And what I have heard from, as far as the article of impeachment, when Congress votes on the article, they send it to the Senate. And then the Senate has a right to say, look, this is not even up for consideration because it's not under high crime and misdemeanors. Like if he were to try to install another Supreme Court justice or some of the other ridiculous things that they try to prove, they can send it back to the Senate, and the Senate could try to impeach Trump every single day from now until election. And if the Senate doesn't accept it as a consideration, then they don't have to actually even vote on it. They don't have to hold hearings. They don't have to do anything because they're not bound.
So they have to hold some kind of vote. So in order for them to make a determinative opinion, which you're right, they can say we think this is bogus. But in doing so, they're basically they're voting to throw it out. That process, regardless of whether it takes 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, the whole purpose of it is to delay it just enough. Right now, you had Republicans come out this week and say that their plan is to have a Supreme Court justice confirmed by Halloween. by Halloween,
Right.
October 31st. That's their target. The election is on November 3rd. If they were to gum up the whole process, even just a day or two, right, they could actually derail it. And that's why they're bringing it out there. Not to try and remove Trump from office, but to waste a little bit of Senate time, at least even if it's just a day, right? The way the Senate works, you derail a process for a day, you could actually stop something from passing by the deadline. That's what I'm talking about. Not that they have to go through a weeks-long trial, but they do actually have to take at least a day on it. I believe that the rules say that they can't rule that day because you have to get the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court over there. There's a whole process to it because he has to preside over that vote. So it does take at least a day, and that's what
Right.
Democrats are hopeful for.
Well, from what I understand in the article, they don't even have to consider it, which means they wouldn't have to vote on it. And the article says it must go to the Senate, but the Senate is not obligated to have to actually even vote on it.
That would fall under Senate rules. So the Senate could amend the rules. Right now, the Senate's rules say that they will promptly consider articles. So yeah, the Senate could change their rules to throw it out. There's no actual constitutional obligation. Everything I'm talking about is just what the Senate's rules are. But to change those, you'd have to have a vote. And to have that vote, the Democrats can gum that up too by filibustering, right? You could put them up and they can just speak for hours. That's where it gets really, really tricky.
Yeah. Yes. I just hope they stand by their ground.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for your call, Sherry. I apologize. Mr. Producer, apparently the producer says your caller ID comes up as Ruth. So I apologize for that. So it's interesting. I mean, these are not necessarily sexy topics, right? the intricacies of the Senate rules related to impeachment. Right? It's not really, they're not sexy topics. And impeachment as a whole is supposed to be a serious thing. But interestingly enough, and Sherry's right, there's nothing in the Constitution that requires them to do A, B, C, and D. Those are in the Senate rules. The problem is that to change the Senate rules, and the Senate rules are designed to assume that no one's going to maliciously file articles of impeachment just to try and delay something a couple days, right? The rules are written assuming that the other side are decent people. I mean, it might be from a long time ago, but that's how Congress used to be run. Absolutely. They could toss it out. They could do all of that, but it would require a couple of votes. Actual votes. Mitch McConnell can't just say, I don't want this and it's done. It requires actual votes. So it's interesting. And that's the whole problem with all of this. It's not designed to actually remove him from office. It's not designed to have an actual hearing on the merits or a trial on the merits. It's designed just to waste as much time as possible in the hopes that they can derail the process. And that's what they did with then Judge Kavanaugh, if you remember. He was about to be confirmed. And all of a sudden these women start coming out of the woodwork. It's like, oh, he looked at me funny. Oh, I saw him at a party walking into a room and he looked mysterious. Oh, I heard from a friend of a friend. Right? It's the REO Speedwagon. Heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from another that Kavanaugh's been messing around. That was what their actual arguments were. That's what their arguments were. And they delayed it. The Senate Judiciary Committee was going to hold a vote on Brett Kavanaugh. And all these women start coming out of the woodwork, and we now know that most of them were discredited. Blasey Ford, in my opinion, she's been discredited, but she still holds that she was correct. Even if it's all discredited, even if he gets onto the court, they still delayed it over a week. Why? Because they wanted to force the FBI to investigate this. This is how crazy these people are. They said, okay, we just need to delay it for a week, give us time to figure out another way to delay it, but we just need more time. That was the Democrats. The Democrats knew the FBI wasn't going to uncover sexual assault proof from a teenage house party decades ago. One, it's not in the FBI's jurisdiction. The FBI does not investigate high school house parties. It just doesn't happen. Right? And two, there's no evidence. Christine Blasey Ford couldn't even say what house it was at, what neighborhood it was at, when it was, right? There's no evidence. So of course the FBI isn't going to come back and say, oh yeah, we just completely rewrote the rules of jurisdiction. We completely rewrote what we do as an organization and decide to start investigating decades old house party drunken high school allegations. They knew that wasn't going to happen. They just wanted to delay it a little bit, but it worked. They got then Senator Jeff Flake, got Lisa Murkowski, sound familiar. They and a couple, I think Rob Portman, came out and said, "No, what? We want a pump the brakes, 1 week delay. Give the FBI time to investigate." They knew full well that the FBI couldn't investigate it. They know that they couldn't actually find anything, but they wanted to do it. And the GOP are, let's be honest, many people in the GOP are cowards. When they're out there giving their speech, the only reason they're doing it is because they know they'll be held to pay if they don't. Right? Kevin McCarthy came out with this promise to remove Nancy Pelosi from the speakership. That didn't happen organically. That was the Freedom Caucus in their meeting earlier this week, pressuring, saying, no, this is too far. You have to say we will remove her. It's not enough just to write your sternly worded letters and to say, shame on you. These people have no shame. You have to remove her. That was the Freedom Caucus. Hearing the pressure from voices like me, voices like you guys, pressuring them, saying this is too far. They've gone too far this time. It was the Freedom Caucus that actually forced that issue. But again, if it wasn't for conservatives pushing for this, Freedom Caucus members, conservative congressmen and senators pushing for this kind of stuff, the GOP is more than happy to say, okay, you know what? They accuse Amy Coney Barrett of sexual misconduct. We have to give them an extra week for an unrelated government agency to investigate unfounded claims. Like that's how cowardly the GOP is a lot of times. And listen, there are a lot of good people. There are a lot of people who are doing their best, but there are also a lot of people that make promises knowing that they have no intention of ever keeping them. Right? Just look at DACA. Remember DACA when Obama signed it? The Republican Congress, led by John Boehner, filed a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of DACA. And we were promised that that if the lawsuit failed, that Republican Congress would force the revocation of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, the DACA amnesty program. They said that if the courts don't rule in our favor, we will absolutely vote to end this program. We heard that back in, 2011, 2012, whatever year. It was right in the beginning of Obama's second term. Then Republicans take control of the Senate and they issue the same promise. Yeah, I know we said that we would get rid of DACA. We just need to wait for the court hearings to actually play out. Lo and behold, it took years. We finally got a Supreme Court ruling this year on the merits of the challenge to DACA, and the Supreme Court upheld it. You don't see any Republicans honoring that promise. I mean, that's how old that promise was. That was John Boehner. Not even Paul Ryan. That was John Boehner making that promise. Fast forward the better part of a decade, and instead of actually taking DACA on and demanding that it be dissolved, Republicans are saying, well, actually, I think everyone understands that we want to keep this program going. I think I can speak for everyone that we want to keep the program going. That's what I'm talking about. And I don't want to go too far on a tangent, but that's what I'm talking about when I say that these people are cowards and they will say what they need to say to get reelected with no intention of actually keeping their promise. It's up to people like us, people like you, to pressure them into keeping those promises. Sherry says, what's the Freedom Caucus? The Freedom Caucus is so there's different caucuses within Congress. There's the there's the Black Caucus, there's the Hispanic Caucus, there's lots of things like that. The Freedom Caucus is people like Jim Jordan. I forget pretty much all the conservative, like Louis Gohmert. You think about the most conservative members of Congress, they're in the Freedom Caucus. So the Freedom Caucus, it came about, I believe, fact check me if I'm wrong, came about right after the rise of the Tea Party. And it was this insurgency within the GOP to force the Republicans to actually honor their promises. So the Freedom, that's what the Freedom Caucus does. It's a good question. It's a fair question. So you look at all of this and you look at every single issue, right? They promised to overturn President Obama's gun control orders, and they did one of them. There was an order that Obama had at the end of his term in office that said that if you're on Social Security and you check a box saying, hey, I want a family member to be allowed to deposit my checks for me, right? Deposit my benefits checks, or to receive my benefits in their account to disperse for me. Or I want a family member to be able to go and buy me my prescription medications or buy me my groceries. If you check that box, the Obama administration said you were unable to manage your own affairs and therefore you lose your Second Amendment rights. That was a real thing. The GOP promised that we're going to take on every single one of Barack Obama's unconstitutional gun control orders. They took on that one and they repealed it. There was a lot of pressure on them to actually do it. But they haven't accomplished anything else when it comes to safeguarding the Second Amendment or expanding your Second Amendment rights. They took on that because they had to. But when it came to actually holding them to promises, they just hoped everyone would forget. Which is why it's so important to keep fighting against Nancy Pelosi, keep fighting against Democrats on the left. Because if we don't do this, if you don't do this, the Republicans are more than happy to sit on their hands or twiddle their thumbs, and whistle, and hope that you forget about what's going on. Hope you forget. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about this. I can go down the list of major promises that Republicans made to get conservatives off their backs. And the minute the news cycle shifted to something else, they hoped you forget about it. They ignored it. Remember repealing Obamacare? Remember that one? Where John McCain comes in after his sabbatical. He comes in and he walks up and he does the gladiator thumbs down. Nope, I vote against it. And the reason that John McCain said he voted against it is he didn't like the process. It was BS. But he said, I didn't like the process that the bill went through. I wanted to have a full subcommittee hearing. I wanted to have a committee hearing. And then it can come to the floor. And presumably, he would have voted for it then. So what happened after that is Mitch McConnell changed his vote to voting against the bill. That allows him to reconsider it. It's like a parliamentary maneuver. A lot of times, actually, you'll see this when a bill doesn't pass, Mitch McConnell votes against it, not because he doesn't support it, but by voting against it, it allows him as majority leader to bring it back up again for another vote. But if you notice, they never brought it up for another vote. They said, oh, yep, we didn't have the votes because John McCain disagreed with the process. That's what they said. He disagreed with the process. John McCain has now been replaced by another Republican senator who is in office until November 30th, I think. If she loses re-election in Arizona, that her successor would have been appointed, would take office on November 30th, around there. He's been replaced. Notice that bill never went back to subcommittee. Notice that it never went back to committee. Notice that it never got a floor vote again. They voted against it because of the substance. Not the substance, because of the process. But they never actually went to fix the process. They never actually went to say, okay, fine. They never tried to call us bluff. Said, okay, fine. You don't like the process. We'll put it back through regular order. They didn't do it because they're more than happy with not getting it done. And that's what I mean by saying that they're more than happy to make a promise and then hope you forget so they don't actually have to do anything about it. Because if they actually wanted to repeal Obamacare, then they would have called John McCain's bluff. Or when John McCain was replaced by someone else who didn't have a problem with the process, they would have put it back up for a vote the same way. But they haven't. It's sitting on McConnell's desk, figuratively. It's not actually on his desk, but it's sitting there collecting dust because they're not actually interested in getting it done. They knew that they promised to repeal Obamacare. They knew that they swore up and down that they would. They knew that they would be held to bay if they didn't at least try. And even if they failed, they knew that they'd be able to at least say we tried. And if it wasn't for John McCain, we would have gotten it through. Even though we all know that John McCain is no longer with us, he's been replaced by someone who probably wouldn't have voted the way he did. But the vote never happens. This is what I mean. We can go down the list. I don't want to go too far into this, but it's everything. It's in absolutely everything. It's in every single thing. Amanda says, wow, so that means because I manage my son's Social Security, he has more Second Amendment rights. That was the argument that Obama made. It was that by checking a box, saying, what was it? You wanted a designated or represented. It was either a designated payee or a representative payee. I forgot the terms. I've seen it used both ways. I think it's designated payee. The idea that if you check that box that I want someone to help me manage my benefits, that in doing so, that is an admission that you're unable to manage your own affairs, which under federal law is one of the ways of defining someone mentally defective. I mean, that's how crazy that got with the Social Security Administration, that by checking that box saying, hey, my son or my wife is going to manage my checks or something like that, you are admitting that you're mentally defective and therefore cannot be trusted with a firearm. And no adjudication, no hearing, nothing. They actually used it as an admission of mental defect. That's how absolutely crazy that was. And yeah, the GOP removed it. But notice that they haven't actually pushed anything else through that was pro-gun. GOP always does the bare minimum. And with Nancy Pelosi, we can't afford the bare minimum anymore. She's been literally, and I don't like when people use literally because a lot of times it's crazy. The word literally has actually been redefined to mean figuratively, which is insane, right? Actually, if you look in the dictionary, I'll try and pull it up. The word literally has been redefined to mean figuratively. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. Okay, Mr. Producer, go ahead and put up my screen. This is what I mean. This is just me getting angry. Literally, Merriam-Webster, definition of literally. 1, in a literal sense or manner, such as in a way that uses ordinary or primary meaning of the term or expression, to use to emphasize the truth or an accuracy of the statement or description. But then if you actually look at definition 2, instead of the literal sense, the other definition of is, in effect, used in an exaggerated way to emphasize a statement or description that is not literally true or possible. So literally has been redefined to mean figuratively, or not possible of being a literal true statement. That's my rant. That's the last time I will run after the word literally. Amanda just wrote and said, yes, Representative Pay, her son's autistic. So yes, if he's highly functioning on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum, even if he's highly functioning, the fact that he had a representative payee assigned, the Obama administration was trying to use that as reason enough to get rid of his Second Amendment rights, which is crazy. It's insane, right? There are plenty of reasons. Like the examples that we always used was, what if you have an elderly parent who doesn't drive and he refuses to use e-banking, but he also can't drive. So the solution is to get his benefits sent to you so that you can, or so that giving you permission to go to his bank to withdraw them for him, right? That was the easy solution. But no, that was the whole argument. Rhonda says, if you ever wanted to run for office, now is the time. We need new blood. I'm sick of lifers. Yeah, I'd love to run for office. I'd love to run for office. It's just, it's a lot. It's a lot to do. It's a lot to do. You need a lot of money. So what would an impeachment, what would a removal of Nancy Pelosi look like? Just getting back to this, we've talked about how the GOP are cowards. We talked about how they do the bare minimum. Listen, Kevin McCarthy does not want to be making that statement. And we'll go ahead and play it again for anyone joining us now, because we played at the start. Let's go ahead, Mr. Producer, one more time and play cut 1. This is Kevin McCarthy's promise to remove Nancy Pelosi if she moves forward with impeaching Trump to delay the Supreme Court confirmation. Let's play cut 1 one more time.
The president is supposed to move forward, and he will. The Senate is supposed to take the action, and they will. It's the constitutional right, and they're following through. And I'll make you this one promise. Listening to the speaker on television this weekend, if she tries to move for an impeachment based upon the president following the Constitution, I think there'll be a move on the floor to have her no longer, or the question of her being speaker. She may think she has a quiver. We do too. We believe everybody in Congress raises their hand and swears to uphold the Constitution. The president did too, and that's what he's following through on. And to think for one moment that they would move impeachment because he's following the Constitution, we will take the movement to remove her from speakership.
Michelle writes on YouTube that if she gets removed, I'm throwing a party and you're all invited. It would be a very, very happy day. It would be a happy, happy day. And USMC veteran writes on YouTube, there will be dancing in the street for sure. I think it definitely would be dancing in the street. So what would it look like? How does Nancy Pelosi, in the event that they do move forward with impeachment, which there are leftists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or as I like to call her, occasional Cortex, because only sometimes does it look like her brain actually is functioning. She wants impeachment. I mean, Democrats want impeachment at any given moment of the day. The far left is pushing this, just like the far left is pushing court packing, just like the far left is now pushing a bill to add term limits to the Supreme Court, which cannot be accomplished through basic legislation because the Constitution, Article 3 of the Constitution states that Supreme Court justices are for life as long as they're on good behavior. That's not the direct quote, but that's the paraphrasing. They serve for life as long as they are on good behavior. Being old is not bad behavior, right? You can't just say that you've been there for too long. That constitutes bad behavior. You need to actually amend the Constitution, which basic legislation wouldn't do it. So again, Democrats are guilty of this too, doing the bare minimum to appease their base without actually accomplishing what they want to accomplish. It's not just a Republican game. Every elected official does it. They make their promises on the campaign, they collect the money, and in office they do the absolute bare minimum. Not all of them are like that, but many are. And it absolutely is on the left and right. So how would it work? Obviously, so let me just explain this. The Democrats, right before Nancy Pelosi was installed as Speaker of the House, they changed the House rules to make it harder for her to be removed from power. Funny how that works, right? Nancy Pelosi becomes Speaker of the House again in a very contentious fight where they actually had to wrangle votes. They changed the rules to make it a little bit harder to remove her from Speaker, but you still can. The Republicans still could force what's called a discharge petition, which a discharge petition forces you, if you're in the minority. So let me just explain. A discharge petition, usually if you're in the majority, the Speaker of the House gets to decide what goes to the floor. So if you wanted to remove the Speaker of the House from power, you would say, I introduce a resolution to remove Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. Nancy Pelosi would say, I see your resolution. I've decided never to put it to the floor. And it just doesn't happen, right? There's no scenario in which the Speaker of the House voluntarily agrees to hold a vote on a resolution to remove him or her. It just would never happen. But with a discharge petition is in place. It's one of the many mechanisms in place to ensure that we don't have tyranny of the majority in this country. So Tocqueville was a Frenchman. He went across America in the early 1800s, I believe. Early to mid 1800s. Don't quote me on that. But it was the early to mid 1800s. Alexis de Tocqueville went across the United States, studying the United States, and said, how is it that the United States is getting democracy, a republic right, when countries in Europe are chaos? Like, what is America doing that they're getting it right? And what he found was that the American system of government is designed to prevent against the tyranny of the majority, which is what a basic pure democracy is. It's 51% or 50% plus one. You get to do whatever you want. And when you have 51%, you get to violate the rights of the 49%. That's tyranny of the majority. And what Alexis de Tocqueville wrote was that America has done an excellent job at securing the rights of minority, not like ethnic or racial or religious minorities, just like minority political groups, protected the rights of the minority to prevent the majority from just running all over them the minute that they get a simple majority in either chamber of Congress or in the presidency or the courts. Very hard to ram something through with just a basic majority in the United States. The discharge petition is one of those mechanisms. So normally, as I said, the Speaker of the House gets to decide when a resolution gets to the floor. A discharge petition allows for critics to discharge something to the floor and bypass the Speaker of the House. But in order to do that, you need to have a majority of the members of the House of Representatives sign onto it. So typically it's 218? Yeah, 218 would be the number as long as every seat is filled and no one's retired. 218 is the magic number. Now we have people who retire, people who die in office, so that number dips down a little bit, but 218 is the magic number no matter what. If you get 218 congressmen to sign on to a discharge petition, they can force a vote on anything, and Nancy Pelosi has no power. No power. So what the only pathway Republicans would have to remove her, Michael Luttrell says 216. It's 216 now. Typically, it's 435 members of Congress usually. They're down a couple, so now it would be 216. But typically, it's 218. 218, yeah, that's half of 435. So it's a little bit lower because people are absent. So that's the only way that Republicans would be able to actually force Nancy Pelosi out, which would mean they would need to get a bunch of Democrats. Let me get the number right. So I don't want to get it wrong. I should know this. I mean, people retire. I really should know how many people are in the House of Representatives right now. Okay, so right now you have, this is easy math. You have 198 Republicans. You have 232 Democrats, 1 Libertarian, 4 vacancies. So in order for Republicans to get discharge petition 2, they need to get 20 Democrats. Actually, no, they need to get 18 Democrats on their side. Right? Yeah, 18 Democrats. If they can get 18 Democrats to vote to remove Nancy Pelosi, or to at least say it deserves a vote, 18 would be the magic number to get her removed from office, or at least force the vote on it. And then after that, it's a simple majority vote. whether or not she should be speaker. She would still be the representative from San Francisco, right? The House can't. I mean, they could kick her out for bad conduct, but that's not what this would do, right? Democrats would never do that. They would just say, we can't trust you as a speaker anymore. And it makes sense to say that, right? Nancy Pelosi, we talked about what she did at the UN. We talked about ripping up the speech. Let's talk about the fact that she delayed coronavirus aid because she wanted to fight for more assistance to the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. One of the reasons that she delayed coronavirus relief from reaching Americans and American businesses was to get the Kennedy Center extra funding. Was it 25 million, 15 or 25 million? Lots of money. The Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Immediately after they received that funding, they laid off all of their performers. So this wasn't to keep them employed. They laid them off. And they took the money and said, thank you for all this money. By the way, handing out pink slips to all of our people. One of the other reasons that Nancy Pelosi withheld aid from getting to the American people in the spring was she wanted more foreign aid. And this is an absolute fact. You go and look at the bill that passed. One of the stark differences between the Republican proposal and the Democrat proposal was the Democrat proposal increased foreign aid to other countries. Increased it. They demanded it. That was a sticking point. You must increase foreign aid or else we will not let you bail out American businesses or help American families struggling. There's a non-zero number of Americans who lost their jobs, businesses that went under, belly up, people lost all their life savings, and yes, probably even a non-zero number of people who committed suicide because they couldn't handle all this. There's a non-zero number of these people because Nancy Pelosi demanded things like foreign aid. We'll never know, but we know it isn't zero. We know it isn't zero. And that alone would justify her removal from office. I mean, think about how horrible of a person you need to be. Hey, Mrs. Pelosi, we're coming to you with this thing. We think it's going to really help. It's called the Paycheck Protection Program. And we're going to give money to businesses so they can keep Americans on the payroll. Stops the businesses from going belly up, keeps people employed so they can pay their bills, and means that we don't have to pay out unemployment benefits as much. It's a win-win-win. Oh, no, and this is Nancy Pelosi. No, we're not going to do that unless you give me more foreign aid. It's crazy. But that's the arguments that were happening within the Democratic Party. And that's my Nancy Pelosi impression is terrible. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't prepare for this. I didn't warm up. I'm really sorry. No, we're not going to do that. That's the argument that the Democrats were making. It's real. None of this is fake. They added foreign aid. They demanded foreign aid. They demanded it. No bill unless you give foreign aid. No bill unless the Kennedy Center gets X amount of dollars. Unrestricted. No strings attached. They don't even have to keep their employees. We just have to bail them out. It's real. And Americans suffered as a result. People lost their businesses. People lost there weren't any real foreclosures then, but people might have lost their homes now as a result. Definite pain and suffering. And again, I believe it's a non-zero number of suicides. People who lost everything and said, I'm just going to take my life. I believe it's a non-zero number because Nancy Pelosi insisted on that. That alone is reason enough to remove her from office. Do you disagree? Let me know in the comment section if you disagree. I think that was despicable, and she did it multiple times. Every single time. Right now, Sherry says that my Pelosi was a Mickey Mouse impersonation. Yeah. I live with a toddler. I've seen, I'm learning all of them. Like, goofy. I've spent too much time with my toddler. And Disney, please do not copy strike me for impersonating your loving characters. Please do not copy strike me for impersonating the characters within the House of Mouse. Amanda says I got a slur if I'm going to impersonate Pelosi. Yeah, you're right. I would have to slur. That's probably where my impersonation went wrong, if we're being completely honest. I probably should have drank a little bit more. Maybe drank a little bit more, maybe pop a couple pills, eat a jar of ice cream. Yeah, it's funny. We have a good time. It's Friday. It's Friday, everyone. But this is what we're talking about with the impeachment, right? It is doable. It is absolutely doable to remove Nancy Pelosi from power if she goes down this path. If she says, because she already screwed over the vulnerable Democrats once. They already screwed her over once by saying, okay, we're going to impeach Trump. I promise it won't bite you. vulnerable Democrats are pissed. They know that that it's not going to be good for them come November. There's going to be a lot of Democrats who barely won re-election in Trump districts. They're going to lose their seats. Hopefully it's enough to give the GOP a majority, but there are going to be many that lose their seats. If Nancy Pelosi says, oh, guess what? We're doing it again. I think that would be enough to get those 18 Democrats to jump over, join Republicans, to at least force a vote to remove her as Speaker of the House. And truly, I believe it's a long time coming. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, she's a disgusting human being. And I don't say that lightly. I truly do believe in assuming the best of people. But she has giving us more. We know way too much about Nancy Pelosi. There's nothing left to the imagination with Nancy Pelosi. We know who she is. She's a horrible person. She puts party over country. She plays politics with American lives and livelihoods. She breaks the law, at least arguably. And she's threatening to impeach the president again. I think that's enough. And the nice thing is that at least Republicans are being forced. At least the GOP is being forced to admit that, yes, we have a plan. Whether or not they have the cojones to go through with their plan, don't know. Doubtful. But at least they're saying we have a plan, and that if she does X, Y, and Z, we're executing the plan. That's a big step. That's a big step for a Republican establishment that is more than willing to just sit on their hands and do nothing. Remember, these are the same kinds of Republicans that would have been happy for Trump to lose and for President Hillary Clinton to be inaugurated, because that would allow Republicans to be in the minority. That would allow them to complain without ever actually having to accomplish anything. That's the Republicans' dream gig, right? In the Obama years, they got to spend 6 of the 8 Obama years in control of the House of Representatives, right? And complaining about everything he did, knowing that nothing they actually did would actually would override a veto, right? He could veto anything they did, so they didn't actually have to try this. They could just say, oh, well, we would try this, but Obama could always veto it, so there's really no point, right? That's what they actually said. And the very few times that you actually had bipartisan support, Democrats said, no, we're not going to force Obama to veto something. We don't want to force him to veto it. So even though it's obvious what he's doing is wrong, we're not going to join Republicans because it's a bad look to force the president of the United States to veto something. I mean, it really is crazy. Let's look at some of the comment section. Mike doesn't like my impersonation. Stick to my day job. Yeah, no, I'm not going to be a voice actor anytime soon. I just have to learn enough of the voices to make my 2.5-year-old son happy. At least he understands what I'm trying for. People saying that in order to do a Nancy Pelosi impression, I have to readjust my dentures. I don't have dentures, so that might be why I'm not good at it. I don't have teeth about to pop out of my mouth. Rhonda says, wasn't she Speaker of the House under Lincoln? I don't think she's that old, but here's an interesting thing. Joe Biden kind of is. Not to be Speaker of the House during Lincoln, but Joe Biden has been in D.C. so long. When he was first sworn in as a United States Senator, among his colleagues were multiple people who were born in the 1800s. Think about that. Donald Trump's big thing is probably going to come up in the debate on Tuesday, which, yes, we are going to be having a debate watch party on our YouTube, our Facebook channel at least, maybe YouTube if we can get producer Josh to swing by. If not, I have to run it and I can just do Facebook at once. The interesting thing, we're going to have a watch party drinking game for that. What was, I just completely lost, my computer froze. We're going to have a watch party for that, absolutely. I just completely lost my train of thought. Oh my goodness. That's weird. My computer just completely froze on me and distracted me, and I lost my train of thought. Mr. Producer said, Josh, our producer, is writing in. He lost his train of thought too. Well, I don't think that. I think Josh just wasn't paying attention. So we are going to be having our watch party for the debates. We'll be having a drinking game during it. We will be doing that. We're also tomorrow, I said this at the start, but we'll say it again. Tomorrow, we are going to be hosting a watch party for Donald Trump announcing the replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We'll be starting our stream at 4:30 Eastern, half an hour before, and then we'll watch the announcement, and then we'll stick around afterwards for a little bit to explain the nominee, their past rulings and such. So make sure you tune in for that. I forget what I was on a roll. Oh, this is so angry. This is angering. Mike says he's switching to Parler. Are you on Parler? Yes, we are on Parler. If you want to follow us on Parler, at Conservative Daily, all one word, we'll be happy to follow you back on Parler. Parler, I haven't figured out if they let you live stream yet. I don't think they do. So we post our YouTube live streams to Parler. So that's how you can follow us on Parler. Thank you. My mom chimed in. That I was talking about the 1800s. Thank you. Yes, there's a non-zero number. I'm on a roll. I'm alone today, so I'm trying to fill up the whole hour, and and my mind's a little racing. Let me see if I can actually find the picture. There's a non-zero number. So when Joe Biden was inaugurated, and thank you to my mother who's watching and always watching, always watching. When Joe Biden was sworn in, I believe it was 73. Yeah, I think it was 73. I think that's right. When Joe Biden was sworn in, there were multiple people in the United States Senate who were born in the 1800s. Now think about that. Obviously, many of us have known someone who was born or met someone who was born in the 1800s. I mean, that's just it's fair. Like the late 1800s, we all have known grandparents or great-grandparents who were born at or around the turn of the 20th century. But to call one of those people your colleague, it shows just how long Joe Biden has been in office. He's been in office for a very, very long time. He's been in office. I'm trying to find, we uploaded it on our Conservative Daily Facebook page a while ago. I'm scrolling to try and find it. Here we go. I found it. Let's go ahead. Mr. Producer, go ahead and put up my screen. These are the 6 people. I don't remember their names at this point, but these are the 6 people who were in the United States Senate the year that Joe Biden was sworn in, who were born in the late 1800s. Now, I'm not trying to be an ageist. I'm not trying to be an ageist. I'm just saying Joe Biden has been in Washington, D.C. for a very, very long time. So long that he can actually call people who were born in the 1800s his colleagues. Not his elders, his colleagues. I think it's an important thing that Donald Trump should definitely bring up because he's going to say that I've been in office 47 months and I've accomplished more than Joe Biden has accomplished in 47 years. That's going to be one of the lines. He's already preparing it. That's definitely going to be one of the lines. I think that Donald Trump should bring that up. That Joe Biden has actually, and we can go ahead and take that off the screen, Mr. Producer, that Joe Biden has actually been in Congress and worked alongside people who were born in the late 1800s. What does that mean? There are people there who are probably one generation removed from the Civil War. That's how long Joe Biden has been in D.C. And so if you have problems in your life, Joe Biden's not the guy to fix them. He's the guy who caused them. Or he's the guy who ignored them and let them get worse. Or it's the guy who tried to fix them and just made things worse. Joe Biden is not the guy to fix them. I think that should definitely be added to Donald Trump's list of debate one-liners, his zingers. Absolutely, it should be. So we're towards the end. I think I'm gonna probably call it because I'm starting to ramble a little bit. But I hope this was informative. I tried to cover the fact that Republicans are promising this while also adding the caveat that they're too spineless probably to actually go through with it. But if they go through with it, the way they do it is through a discharge petition, for which it is possible to get 18 moderate Democrats to be so in fear that they'll lose their careers that they would vote at least to hold the vote. That's the pathway. So I hope this has been informative. I tried to make it informative. Again, Joe Otto couldn't be here today, but he should be here on Monday. We'll be going live tomorrow, as I said, at 4:30 Eastern to cover the Trump's announcement of his nominee. We're going live half an hour before it for some pregame coverage. Then we'll stay live after for some postgame coverage. So make sure that's on our Facebook page if you want to sign up for that. You can basically hit a button that says Get Reminder, and Facebook will remind you when we go live. It's just a lot of people complain that Facebook doesn't always send them notifications. That's a way to get around it. Hit that Get Reminder button. Also, as I said it in the start, we are just a couple of people away. We might have passed it, I don't know. But we started today's podcast a couple away from having 1,000 total subscribers on YouTube, which is a big deal. If we have 1,000, we can monetize our YouTube page. So I am in the Facebook comment section. I am going to actually just right now, I just posted the link. If you click on that link, as long as you have a Gmail account or whatever, you click on that link and it'll send you the page, give you a pop-up to let you just click one button and automatically subscribe to our YouTube page. So please do that if you haven't already. If you have, thank you. But we really want to get over that 1,000 person hump. And Mr. Producer Josh is writing in my chat window. Make sure you thank your amazing producer. He is the linchpin of the show. That was from a caller. Oh, a caller. A caller wants me to make sure I thank Mr. Producer Josh. Well, thank you, Josh, for everything you do. I really do appreciate it. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. Remember that if you like the podcast, do subscribe to the audio version too. If you can't always watch us live on YouTube or Facebook, you can subscribe to the audio version on Apple Podcasts. That's the big one. That's where we're number 125 in America. We're number 66 in New Zealand. And we just learned today that we are number 60 in Ireland. That's crazy. I love that. Make sure if you haven't already, subscribe to the Apple Podcast. Leave us a good review. It really helps us. But we're also available if you don't use an iPhone or a Mac. We're also available on Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, or Podbean. So check us out there. If you're listening to the audio, we also go live Monday through Friday for a whole hour on our YouTube and Facebook pages. So make sure you check us out there. Also, as I mentioned earlier in the show, we are on Podbean at Conservative Daily. If you follow us, we'll be happy to follow you back. And there is a link in the description to sign up for our email newsletter. Please do that. If we get taken down by Facebook, we just got fact-checked again. This is crazy. We shared a video of them handing out the shields to the protesters in Louisville, and we got hit with a fact-check because we didn't share the full context. Sorry, all we said is that they're handing shields out in Louisville. What more context do you want? Really crazy. So we just got hit with another one. If we keep getting these BS strikes, we're taken out. So make sure you sign up for an email newsletter. If we get taken down off of Facebook, that'll be how we reorganize the show in the future. So I think I got through everything. Happy Friday, everyone. Again, my name is Max McGuire. This is going to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. And remember that the fight to take back our country clearly is not over, but the only way we win is if we all stand and fight together.